2 warships are said to be on standby tonight in case they're needed to help a possible evacuation of British civilian citizens stranded by the conflict in Sudan. As the violence continues in densely populated cities like the capital Khartoum, between 2,000 and 4,000 Britons are thought to remain in Sudan after diplomatic staff were rescued at the weekend. So far, the government has told British nationals to exercise their own judgment over whether to flee. Tonight, the US said the 2 rival armies fighting for control of the country have agreed on another ceasefire starting about half an hour from now. France is among a number of countries which have already started airlifts from nearby Djibouti, from where Rageh sent this report.
The race to get foreign nationals out of Sudan is picking up. And tonight, it was the turn of Djibouti, showing that it's not just Western powers who can bring their citizens home.
What's the situation like in Khartoum?
I cannot express.
Bad.
I cannot express. Very bad. And bullets and guns everywhere.
There were about 25 students who'd made the difficult and dangerous journey. They were met by the Djiboutian foreign minister. They'd first travelled by land from Sudan to neighbouring Ethiopia and then flown home from Ethiopia, all the while accompanied by Djiboutian diplomats. I asked the foreign minister what advice he'd give to the British government about getting their citizens out.
I think the options are there. We decided to bring them back by road, but I know that there is a small military airport not far from Khartoum. Some of the European countries are using that military airport to evacuate their nationals. There are options, there are facilities.
And other European countries like France are using those options and facilities to bring not just their nationals, but also those of other countries, from India to Ireland, to safety here in Djibouti.
The fact that the tiny African country of Djibouti has been able to get its own civilians out of Sudan by land and air is likely to lead to very awkward questions for the British government after they've already seen other European countries do the same.
We were hoping they were going to evacuate, but now we are not sure if that's happening, not happening. We have no indication. So we're having to look at all our options. And all of these ways are not without risk. People are getting robbed, injured. There's many reports. So yes, it's definitely a scary situation.
Basma has relatives trapped in Sudan and is frustrated about why the British government can't get them out.
If every other country, the small little countries, have the ability to pull their people out and to get them out, how are the British government just standing by and being like, stay indoors? Stay indoors and do what? Like, hope for the best and hope you don't get killed?
Meanwhile, the situation in Sudan continues to deteriorate. Today, paramilitary fighters battling the government paraded heavily armed vehicles they said they'd captured. And tonight, the US government says a 72-hour ceasefire starting at midnight has been agreed, but this conflict has all the hallmarks of being a full-blown civil war. The streets of Khartoum remain dangerous. The next few days will be crucial, and time is not on the side of efforts to get expatriates out.
And let's speak to Rageh now, who's in Djibouti, as we said, east of Sudan. Rageh, looking at those images and hearing from the people you talked to earlier, it's clearly terrifying there on the streets of Khartoum. But, you know, there is this temporary ceasefire, supposedly. What chance that it will hold, and is this an opportunity to get foreign nationals out?
Well, 2 things there. First of all, will it hold? I hate to say it, but I doubt it. Several reasons for that. The 2 men at the head of the 2 factions fighting each other have a very blooded past in Sudan, and they are at each other's throat and determined to hold power. They both have attracted proxy wars support from regional and international powers, the United States and Israel and other powers supporting the government, and other regional powers like the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Saudi Arabia supporting the other side. So there's all kinds of deep entanglements and a lack of really civilian democratic alternatives that suggests that force is the main driver of politics in Sudan. But I think it is a window for countries like Britain and others to try and use this ceasefire for the 3 days to get their people out. I mean, we've seen that the Djiboutian foreign minister telling me that he's found options and alternatives. France has, and tonight the Saudi royal family, the Saudi Royal Navy has extracted 200 people out of Port Sudan into Jeddah, and they include 5 Brits amongst many others. So I don't think it'll hold in the long run, but it does provide a window of opportunity.
OK, Rageh, thank you very much indeed. Well, getting the UK's diplomatic staff out of Sudan was one thing, but any operation to bring out British civilians stranded there is likely to be a very different kettle of fish. Rohit, our global security editor, is here to analyse how it might happen and the potential problems and pitfalls. Rohit.
Well, Tom, all day, the British government have been saying that, the real answer here was a ceasefire. And so we have one. So let's see what happens. Let's see if it holds. But we've also heard these comparisons with the evacuations which followed the fall of Kabul 2 years ago. This situation, though, is so different, in many ways more unpredictable, more dangerous. This conflict isn't about ideology. It's about greed, power and control. It's about 2 rival generals, Abdel Fattah al-Burhan and Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo. The focus of their fighting has been here in the capital of Khartoum, close to the presidential palace and to the airport there. This is also the diplomatic quarter where most of the Western foreign embassies are also located too. Now, here's what happened on Saturday night, reportedly. 3 US Chinook helicopters landed in Khartoum carrying a small contingent of British special forces. Now, that team then drove into the centre of the city where UK diplomats and their families had been told to gather in a small number of buildings. Now, those evacuees were then transported north of the city to an airbase which is run by the Sudanese armed forces, and from there they were flown out to Cyprus. Now, for British people in Sudan, staying is risky, but leaving is risky too. And here's the evidence. Turkey was forced to postpone one of its operations after an explosion close to a mosque that had been designated as its assembly point. And for those hoping to make their own way out, there's warnings too of long journeys requiring stops to refuel, road journeys to the Egyptian border and to Port Sudan, taking roughly 12 hours or so. And though fighting has reportedly died down outside of Khartoum for now, the trip leaves people vulnerable if the situation does escalate.
Just seeing you talk about there, and again, seeing the pictures in Rageh's piece, it's clear how frightening it is. OK, we've got a ceasefire. You talked about the 2 rivals there. The ceasefire aside, is there any sense of who's actually winning this civil war?
Well, this is an unequal fight. Only one side has real air power, for example. But, as Rageh alluded to there, this is far bigger. This is an internal conflict. But there are at least a dozen other countries involved directly or indirectly. There are 7 neighbouring nations. 5 of those nations, have had recent conflict and political turmoil. All eyes on countries like the Central African Republic. We have the United Arab Emirates supporting one side, the Egyptians supporting the other side, but the Egyptians also supporting the United Arab Emirates financially. So, this is much bigger than Sudan, and it has the potential to escalate in many directions. And of course, the final big player here in the background is the Russian mercenary group Wagner, which has been reportedly supplying and helping one side, although they deny that. And so, yeah, this goes way beyond Sudan, and this may well go on for some time as well.
OK, Rohit, that was very clear. Thank you very much indeed.